Welcome to this tutorial, Using Sources Successfully, from Evaluation to Integration. Whenever you're going to write a research paper, remember, there is a process. It's going to be similar in every paper that you write, and it'll always start with the research. This is your opportunity to get in there and explore some questions that you might need to have answered. And that's going to move you into the evaluation of those sources that you find. Remember, we talked about this in depth when you looked at the video on using the CRAP test. From evaluation, that will take you to the integration. How are you going to move these sources into your own writing while still maintaining your own integrity? And then finally, you'll move into the citation process. And that's either going to be your works cited page or your references page. So let's talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts. Evaluation. You should have already watched the in-depth video, but let's go over the CRAP test quickly. Remember, it consists of currency. That's the timeliness when the information was published. The relevance. How does this relate to your research question? Remember, there has to be a close link. The authority, who wrote it and how credible is the author? The accuracy, where did this information come from? Can it be verified elsewhere? And finally, the purpose. Why does this information exist? Hopefully you've taken the time to do all this before you've decided on using a resource. But once you have made that resource, you're going to need to figure out how to integrate it. So there are several ways. Remember, you can locate the CRAP test in Canvas. Integration is going to be the three different ways that I mentioned earlier. Quotation. This is when you're using word for word citations from whatever the source is. The second option is paraphrase. This is where you're taking several of the main points of what you've read and putting them into your own words. And finally, summary. Summary is when you're going to look at the main point and put it into your own words. And there's different rules for each one of these, and we'll look at them here in a moment. So, quotation, word for word, paraphrase, in your own words covering the main points, and summary in your own words covering the main point. Let's talk first about using quotations. And there are some rules. Use them sparingly. You don't want your paper to be a patchwork quilt of other people's ideas. Remember, your writing should be smooth and it should maintain your own tone. When you drop in a bunch of quotations from other people's, what happens is it becomes very disjointed and jarring to read. Second thing to remember about using quotations is avoid using more than 40 words. I know if you have to write a long paper that it's tempting to throw in those long block quotes, but don't do it. Again, when you're writing a college level paper, the majority of the paper should be your own ideas. And then finally, before you decide on using something word for word, you want to determine the uniqueness. If you look at the cars in this picture, they are not unique. There would be no reason for me to use a quotation that doesn't have some uniqueness. What you're looking for is something more along the lines of this. Think back to Letter from Birmingham Jail. Martin Luther King's quotation, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That is unique. So that is the hallmark that your quotations need to pass before you can actually put them into a paper. So, let's see it in action. Here is an original from something that I read. Please pause your tape now and read the entire quotation here. And then once you have read it, go ahead and resume it, and let's take a look at how I pulled a quotation out of here. So from that long paragraph, I came up with Melzer indicates, quotes, college professors want you to learn to think for yourself and not simply regurgitate information, end quote, and then the page number there in parentheses and then the period. If I saw this in your paper, I could see immediately Melzer, okay, this is coming from somebody else. I see that there's a direct quotation because it's in quotation marks. I see a page number and a period. Okay, that's the end of what is coming from somebody else. It's very easy to differentiate what is your idea and what is somebody else's idea when you bracket it with the author, a verb of attribution such as indicates, and then you have that page number and period at the end. So, keeping that same original source in mind, let's take a look at what a paraphrase is going to be. Now remember, a paraphrase is going to pull out several of the ideas, but put it into your own words. So a paraphrase of that same source could be, Melzer advises college students to avoid simply creating a patchwork quilt of other people's ideas, since professors will expect a deeper level of engagement and critical thinking. It will not be enough to just repeat ideas. Instead, filtering those ideas through the student's understanding will lend authority to the writing and showcase researching skills. Entering the scholarly conversation in this manner allows students to keep their own argument at the forefront while still backing up claims with credible information. So we have that same idea of Melzer, verb of attribution, advises, then the paraphrase, pulling out the main points from that original source and putting it into my own words. Notice how I'm not repeating what is said over there. You can't find phrases that are the same or even word choices that are still the same. But the main ideas are there. Again, there's the page number and the period, so I know when reading a paper that I could see, okay, this is what Melzer has to say, and this ends what Melzer has to say, and then I'm going to move into the student's own writing. So again, paraphrase is much the same length as the original, but in your own words. So let's take a look at the final one, summary. Remember, summary is pulling out the main point. So it's going to be much shorter and it's going to require more critical thinking. You have to read the entire thing and try to figure out what is the main point. Here we have Melzer proposes that students limit direct quotes to retain control over their argument. So after reading that entire paragraph, that's what I decided was the main point. I still start with Melzer. I still use a verb of attribution, proposes. It's still in my own words, but remember it's still bracketed. I've got Melzer there at the beginning. I've got the page number at the end so that I know that, okay, that's from somebody else. And notice the length. I've taken multiple sentences in that paragraph and turned it into one short sentence. Think back to the paraphrase. That was many sentences. Summary, a single sentence. So keep those ideas of length in mind, especially when you're taking the quiz. In Canvas, there is a link to a handout on verbs of attribution. This can help you as you integrate your sources. So what's next? Well, I want you to marinate on your sources. It's not enough to just read them once. If you're going to do summary and paraphrase, you need to engage with that text and be able to pull out the main point or the main points. Always use signal phrases and verbs of attribution. So you have that handout for verbs of attribution, but signal phrases could be something as simple as, according to Melzer or as cited in Melzer. Remember, you just want to be able to bring in the author's name before whatever it is that you're citing from the author. And avoid quotations. I know that it seems counterintuitive to tell you don't put a bunch of quotations in there. Remember, anytime you use somebody else's words, that's going to break the unity of your own voice. And we want these to read smoothly. And if you're strictly using somebody else's words, why not just give us a list and have us read those? Your goal as the author is to filter these ideas and integrate them into your own. Please rely on summary and paraphrase. It is essential that you develop these tools. As you move forward in your education, summary and paraphrase are going to become more and more important. You'll notice that in the scholarly articles that you're reading, people aren't using quotations. They are summarizing and paraphrasing. And finally, of course, ask for help. The hint here is always ask for help before you get behind. If something is difficult, ask for help as soon as you realize that you can't solve it on your own. Remember, I'm just an email away. You can contact me through the Canvas inbox or email me at lrosen@coastline.edu. So, please have fun with integrating sources, and I look forward to reading your papers.